What is good, everyone? Welcome to a podcast of four fans. Four fans, this is the Fourcast Philippines. My name is Mark. I am your PR boy next door. With me is the real deal, JV,
Let's get it.
the back to back rookie of the year. Yes, it is possible, Frankie J.
What it do?
Last but not the least, the human internet troll, Manzano.
Yo,
Manzano, what happened to your lights?
Ano
What
yun?
happened to your
my
lights?
life.
Ba't isa lang yung
Yeah.
yo?
I'ma explain it later, man. What happened
Bakit
to my
may
life?
point
Oh.
din? Bakit
Tsaka-
isang iyo? Tapos
Isang yo.
Trying
Ayun,
something
bro.
new.
Later.
ano
Trying
yun?
something new.
No. Later. All in due time.
Okay.
All in
Okay.
due time.
All right. Okay. So we are a podcast of four fans talking about basketball, which is our favorite sport. And in the recent headlines, we've seen Blake Griffin join the Brooklyn Nets, already adding to what is what people would call or consider a super team. So you have Durant, Harden, Kyrie, and now Blake Griffin, and even DeAndre Jordan. So if this was 5 to 10 years ago, this would be unfair. They would call off the season and just award the trophy to them. But in 2021, it's still a very solid team, and which made us think now here and for a topic that we wanted to discuss for quite a while, the greatest super teams and super teams in general. I would consider, I don't know about you guys, but this four-man lineup here is already a super team, right?
Obviously.
We're a super team, and as a super team, we are in the position or in the authority to talk about NBA super teams. Which leads us to our first question or defining what exactly is a super team. Ano ba ay mga criteria or what makes a super team for you guys? I wanna have para may iba. Let's have the human internet show Manzano to go first. What do you consider to be criteria for a super team?
Mark, I'm a simple guy. I don't want room for subjectivity when it comes to this. So it's simple. The definition for a super team is if for that year the team has three all stars and three named all stars, not former all stars, not future all
Mm.
stars for the same year. That's my simple definition.
So
Wow.
parang hindi talaga apt yun. Kasi by your definition, this season, Utah is a super team. You have Mike
Yes.
Conley, Spida, tsaka si Gobert. Ha? Super
Okay,
team?
you can
In
name
the
na
rest
sige like
of rankings?
okay,
Isasama mo siya doon?
you can say that Conley was, like just added, but for the very simple definition of that, yes. It's the most
Wow.
complete objective definition that you can get.
Well,
Hey,
yeah.
can
There's
you
still
guys do better? Go.
there's still number one team in the NBA right now. So I think it kind of
Exactly.
does make
As I said, JB,
sense.
it
Uh,
translates to the result. Now let's see. I
And
mean, the season isn't over. Let's see if they win the championship. Maybe you'll change your tune. Let's see. They go
it's
16-0 in the playoffs. I don't know.
it's
So
Sige,
it's
let's
not
good
see.
team
always
sila, but hindi sila super team.
Okay, then what's yours? What's your definition? I'm
oh,
all
what's your
ears.
definition?
Sige, super team kasi at least may three all-star caliber
That's
players.
I say. Go ahead.
Yung, tsaka, they're branded as a super team. Yun yung like defining key sa
Mm.
definition of mga super teams. Kasi all people have to agree na super team nga talaga sila. Like, they're a force to be reckoned with. Pero pag tinignan mo Utah, parang takot ka ba talaga na mag-champion sila? Parang hindi eh.
Are they a
There's
credible threat?
there's so
Right?
much room for interpretation because if you say three all-star calibers, I mean, we have to
Mm.
make it objective. That's at least for me. That's why I said three all-star and for the same year. So
I like the point that JV brought up in terms of being branded as a super team, because the media and the fans do have a narrative that they play a lot in terms of the narrative of a super team. Kasi who calls a team a super team? The players don't call them a super team. And it's not really the coaches, right? It's really the media and the fans. So that's a good point. Frankie J, ikaw, what's your thoughts on this super team dynamic?
I think for me it's a mix of what of both of what Manzano and JV said. Of course, you can't have a super team without any all star caliber players. Yes. I think for me, what the other criteria that they didn't mention is Hall of Fame type kind of players, a generational kind of player, wherein you can have at least two and then an additional All Star caliber player. And I think that's what a super.
Mayaman narinig ko dun ah.
I think that's what the super team basically is
Yeah.
historically as well. So we can go back to the Bulls. So they have Pippen and Jordan, and then they have Dennis Rodman. And then we have the Celtics with Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, KG, and then you have Rondo to add to that. And then of course we have the Warriors, wherein we had Steph, Clay, Draymond, and KD, and the Brooklyn Nets with KD, Harden, Kyrie. Can add Blake as a role player, DeAndre
Yeah.
Jordan as a role player, and they still have Spencer Dinwiddie pending, who almost
Mhm.
made the All Star game a few years back. So and then of course the greatest team assembled. No, I'm just kidding. But my favorite, of course, with LeBron, D Wade, and Bosch, and then
Emphasis on
set
assembled.
of role players with them. So I think you know that's why you really can't. For me personally, you really can't brand Utah right
Super
now
team.
as a super team because
Hmm.
as of now, do you think Donovan Mitchell is a Hall of Fame type of
Oh,
player? Do you think Rudy Gobert
Not
is a
yet.
Hall of Fame type of player? Probably Mike Conley, but he's kind of under the radar as well. So
Yeah.
in terms of branding, well, with what JV mentioned, I think you need to have that, and that's really present with the previous teams that I've said,
Yeah.
Boston, Bulls, Miami, and Brooklyn.
True.
You have these players that are branded as all stars on their own, and then they team up with other all stars who are independently branded as all stars as well and Hall of Fame players, and then that kind of threatens the league as well. So, of course, when
Yeah.
this Brooklyn Nets, even without James Harden being formed, you're already
They're a super
threatened,
team.
and then they add James Harden, and then they add
uh, th-
they
I
this,
add
th-
Blake Griffin, and I just saw rumors that they're still trying to add Andre Drummond. So what the hell
or
is gonna
Aldridge,
happen to
Lamarcus
the? Oh,
Aldridge.
and yeah, exactly. So that the impact of, as JD mentioned, the marketability of the
Hmm.
players in a team.
uh,
That I think that's a big part of being branded as a super team, in my opinion.
okay, this might troll take rebuttal on that. And as a troll, the majority isn't always right. And I'm gonna say it out loud. Sometimes, most times, media and the fans are freaking idiots. So they can
Really?
hype up whoever they wanna hype up. It's not gonna go up against facts and objectivity. So that's just me against branding and all.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
mention
All right.
Hall of Fame caliber,
Well,
also caliber, like okay, like there's a consensus, whatever. But
yeah.
the, then they people have their own agendas and whatnot. So that's why I want to stick to
Well,
objectivity.
Yeah. Well,
I think
trolls
what
are also freaking idiots at times. So I think
that's
Ooh.
true.
that's a kind of a
Touche,
counter attack.
touche.
We no man, we based on the truths, man.
Right. Sorry, Mark.
Speaking
I
the
think
truth.
I interrupted.
Yeah, I was just about to bring it up. Well, that's why I think the ingredients to a super team is not just about hype. It's also, well, also Manzano said, all star selected all stars. JV said, um, um,
Potential.
what did JV said? What did JV say? Sorry. What did JV said? Nawala ako sa
Potentially
train of
potential
thought.
all-stars kasi.
Potential all
Branding.
stars, branded as a super team, and Frankie J brought up, I guess meron na silang accomplishment, or there's a credibility to them because they've achieved outside of that team. And I agree with all of those, but just to add to my criteria to it. So aside from having, in my case, two all stars, and two Hall of Fame caliber players, you also
At
need,
least two
I
or
believe,
two lang.
Well, at least two. At least two. That's in my opinion. At least
Duo
two.
lang yun, Mark.
Hindi. I mean, super team. If you look at the past super teams, there's at least a
Wait.
good
Okay,
number of
Mark.
them that dalawa, at least dalawa yung Hall of Fame caliber players, because it may be because that super team has
Wait.
elevated them to that status eventually after. And let me just run this last two. One is they have to have a solid sixth man, someone who could really contend for the sixth man of the year trophy. Um, Probably has won it or has been in the conversation several times. Importante kasi yun kasi I think that's what that's the unheralded asset na meron sila kasi it's not always gonna be the stars carrying them. Minsan kailangan mo rin ng bench support, and that sixth man will help, motivate them and galvanize them. Kung wala silang nagagawa, at least the sixth man would, would help them. And lastly, they need to have a capable coach, someone who at least,
Oh,
if they're not considered,
Coach.
if they're not the most winningest coach, at least there's someone who is a student who knows the game well and can command respect, can manage all those egos. Kasi you have to admit, managing those egos and leading them to wins is difficult. Kasi you may not always get along. And as you saw, who was that? David Blatt, diba? He didn't get along with LeBron, so he was out. And who won the championship with him? It was Ty Lue, the assistant. So may not be the most skilled coach, but someone who's capable enough to really rally everyone together and lead them to the championship, which is a super team's goal, diba? Eventually. So I think that's wraps up our first question of what makes a super team. They have to have all-star players in that year. That'll help their case if they're in that team winning. They need to have all-star caliber players, Hall of Fame caliber players. They also need to have a good sixth man, a capable coach, and kahit
Ikaw
papano,
lang, ikaw lang nagsabi nun, Mark.
ako na lang
Kasi,
yun,
ikaw
in
lang
my
labas
nagsabi.
kami
opinion.
dyan, Mark.
Sige,
And
I am not part
consensus
of
daw eh.
that.
not part, I'd like to exclude
Yeah.
yourselves in that part of the narrative.
Yes.
And lastly, before joining that super team, they've proven something outside of it before joining. So okay, so those are our criteria for the super teams, and later on we'll give our own choices for who was our favorite super team to watch or who was the best super team to watch. But second question, lead us to the discussion is, knowing all of these, are super teams good or bad for the NBA? I want to start with JV. Are they good? Are super teams good or bad for the NBA overall?
Overall, like, they're good kasi sila yung pinaka-marketable na teams and sila yung like tatatak agad sa mind ng fans. So this means higher
Right.
ratings and higher like business with the NBA. Tapos on the other side, in terms of competition, kasi usually yun lagi yung argument ng mga tao against super teams is that it diminishes the parity sa
Mm-hmm.
NBA. But
Yep.
I would say na because may ganitong super teams, hindi naman nag-roll over lang mga other teams kasi
Yep.
mas malaki sing isa eh. Like, they're increasing their trainings, they're increasing their sports facilities, they're investing more in order to win. So in terms of that, in terms of competition, in terms of ratings, in terms of business, it's only good sides for the NBA to keep super teams. That's my
Right.
take.
I definitely agree. You brought up a good point about parity. Some people challenge that nawawala yung parity of the league because you have well, even until now, it's always been the West that's been more competitive. They've had teams with better records overall, and that's just really what's bound to happen. But I don't think having a super team necessarily hurts the league. We've come to this point that in this generation of talent, I think you guys should agree, the fact that after this All Star game just a few days ago, marami pa ring snubs, and you can still call some of them fringe All Stars. The league has so much talent to go around, so it's maybe some teams like Brooklyn and LA, they have a bunch of stars playing together, era of the duos, but you can't deny that the potential and that the talent that's in the other teams.
On
And
other
yun
teams.
nga, as we've seen in all these upsets before in the series, so we're we're also lucky that this crop of talent has so much more skills, athleticism, and the technical knowledge, and also it helps that compared to before, like they're able to recover from injuries faster and better. So
Yeah.
even if you do have like Paul George when he broke his leg or his foot, whatever it broke, he still came back a strong player, and other players have done that as well. So in this generation of talent and with modern medicine,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think super teams only do good for the NBA. Syempre, kasi you can only have so many super teams. It's usually just
Yeah.
around one or two, di ba? They bring more people to watch, more
To the game,
casual
yeah.
fans,
Mhm.
more money, and overall better quality of play. That's my take. Let's go to Frankie J.
All
What
right.
do you think? Good or
So
bad?
for me, I think for me, it's not really not as simple as answering that question if it's good or bad. I believe it's a double-edged sword.
Okay.
So it could either be good or bad. For it could be good just because of there's gonna be huge attention on these super teams. So on
Mm.
the marketability, as I've mentioned, ratings, TV views, all that. As what JV mentioned, so it's gonna rise. But I think one of the bad things about it is it's gonna just get cramped. That tension is just gonna get cramped to those super teams. So um,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, I think around probably 90% of the time, super teams go to really franchises, historical franchises, Boston Celtics. You have the
Mm-hmm.
Lakers, Miami,
Yep.
Brooklyn, or big cities. Um,
Big markets. Yeah.
they don't really go to small cities like Minnesota or
Charlotte.
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And you might tell me there's a case where in
Yes.
Cleveland got a super team with Kyrie, LeBron, and Kevin Love, but no, it's not the city of Cleveland. It's the city of LeBron, so that's why they went there.
Mm.
But I think if you have Cleveland right now with all right, let's activate Drummond. If two other All Stars go there, let's say John Wall, and then you can add Sabonis. Would you think that it's a super team? I don't think that
Yeah.
a lot of people will be kind of threatened by it. So I think that's one thing that's bad. That's as I mentioned, it's a double edged sword. The focus will only be on a few teams who have really super team caliber, a super team caliber type, and for the other teams, for the smaller teams, they're just gonna be under the shadows of those teams.
Mm.
So again, it's gonna be cramped in terms of attention, TV ratings, national. They have this national TV schedule wherein most of the games are played by big franchises. And,
Yeah.
you often see smaller
They have the most
franchises
games. Yeah.
such as Sacramento Kings complain they only have one nationally televised game throughout the season, like last year, I think. So
Mm.
Oh.
that you know the light is just gonna shine on those big franchises, and the other teams are just gonna be shadowed by them.
I feel like hindi
Manza.
naman problema ng super team yun. Like, kasi parang it's more of a problem na smaller market versus larger market. Diba?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
yung usual
yeah.
narrative na
I
kahit sino naman players, for example, the Knicks, kahit banu sila, lagi naman sila may coverage eh.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
All right.
especially
The
now.
But a
Like,
lot of
magaling na sila.
but still, you have this narrative that a lot of NBA players want to play for the Knicks, even stars. They just don't. I guess the management sucks, but they just don't
Ay,
want to
nagsak.
go there. But
yeah.
The New York Knicks, a historically acclaimed franchise, or historically, it's a really a big franchise where a lot of players dream of playing in the Madison Square Garden, and I think it's despite they're good now, but despite their history of having bad records, a lot of players really want to play just to have New York on their chests. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
yung big uh, market value or market size will always be it'll never be all 30 teams will have an equal
Yeah, that's
cut of
true.
the pie. But in recent years, if anything, like New York hasn't attracted big free agents in a while. It's not always a guarantee that if you're in this big market, you'll attract players. It depends on the culture. It depends on the, I guess, even who
Mhm.
is the player that brought you there, who recruited you there, diba? LeBron when he
Yeah, but
was
at one
running
point they had
Miami or
Amari and then Melo,
Cleveland.
so it's really
Yeah,
it still was a destination.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
How about Manzano?
I'm happy that Frankie J went ahead before me because if I had followed JV and Mark, I would have said that was complete freaking trash, man. That's BS. Super teams are absolutely not black and white bad for the league. Okay, JV mentioned the competitive angle that he kind of downplayed it. I disagree. It does give. It's just simple math. Okay, get the best athletes, put them in one team. Okay, sure, the other teams are gonna put up a fight, but let's face it, it's not just a basketball issue. We're talking about a revenue issue. We use the Knicks as sort of like an example, but they're more of the exception. I mean, let's face it, they're not gonna make a super team in Charlotte. They're not gonna make a super team in
Mm.
in what Minnesota or
Minnesota.
whatever. They're always gonna converge around those big market teams that Frankie J mentioned.
If,
Secondly, and I don't know if you guys gonna agree, on the competitive standpoint, I want to see the best athletes perform at their best. Usually, when it's a super team, you get the three players, four players. Third and fourth players suffer. I think we mentioned this in past episodes. They're gonna drop down in their
yeah,
production, right? So I want to see the
Mhm.
best doing what they do best. Not like okay, there's a bigger star than me. Like I'm a competent star. There's a bigger star than me. I'm gonna
yeah.
pass
Yeah,
the ball to him
that's
because they were on the same team. So I want to see the best being the best. And secondly, super teams aren't just bad for the league. Super teams are bad for the super teams. I'm a firm
Hmm.
believer, Mark. You see, it's kind of dark here. You know why? Because I'm
What?
wearing a Darth Vader T-shirt,
Oh,
and you know what they say about Darth Vader? He's part of the Sith, man. And what do they say about the Sith? There can be no more than two Sith lords at a time.
they
And
say
it's
that.
this, yeah, there can be no more
Yeah,
than two
dalawa
Sith
lang.
Lords at a time.
Ah.
And who won? Actually, for me, the Sith beat the Jedi, but this is another debate. Point is, two is the
Another
max.
podcast.
Two is the max. You go more than
There's
that,
the
you get
max.
diminishing returns.
There's
yeah.
a there's parang it becomes imbalanced. Too
Yeah, I
much
Yep,
star
agree.
star
Actually, the
power.
perfect scenario was last season where there were a lot of duels. I think
yep,
that's
exactly.
a lot. That was a really competitive season.
Exactly.
Diba? And I think
Yeah.
It's
it was interesting,
better for the
and I
teams,
really
better for
liked
the
it
leagues.
compared to when Golden State was
Yeah.
the Golden State era, even the Heat era. I might admit, despite me being a fan, but it's really just champion na naman Miami, champion na naman Golden State, champion na naman Lakers. There's really no you want to be unpredictable when it comes to these seasons.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I want the season to be unpredictable. Um
Pero
and
yun
right
lang yung
now, though the
nature
Utah
ng
Jazz is
NBA.
winning,
It's unpredictable. Like
Yeah.
historically, ito naman yung super teams eh. Kaya nagkakaroon tayo
Yeah.
ng mga stories na, for example, ng Dirk. Like, very unpredictable. May super team
yeah,
na,
that gets
may team na
Yeah,
nakapag-defeat nung super team. Nagkaroon lang ng
yeah,
ganong opportunity kasi may super team. Which was
yeah,
good for
Yeah.
alam mo, it's
the
once
league.
every 10
yeah, I
years.
get
Alam
it.
mo
And
yun, ako
medyo
like,
dinownplay mo
we're,
yung best
we're,
versus best kasi yun yung structure ng NBA ng
yan na
playoffs.
nga,
They're
we're,
pitting the best against each other. It's not like lahat ng players ay isang team lang. Hindi naman ganun eh. Like
And
maraming generational talent from different teams. Hindi naman sila
you have
nagsasama
to
lahat sa isang team eh.
just to add to that, it has to also be because compared to before, diba, winning a championship, parang that really defines your career more than anything now. Very few players now have the mindset that I'm gonna stay in one team and retire. Just do my best to bring wins, bring the team to the playoffs every single year or as much as I can. Ngayon kasi it's all I have to win. If I don't win, I haven't achieved. That's why more
Ring
players
culture,
jump
no?
to teams. Yeah, the ring
yeah,
culture has something to do with it.
But yeah,
Iilan lang naman yung players like
going
let's
back,
say Kawhi Leonard
the,
and LeBron who can win in different teams.
yeah,
ako,
but
ito
going
lang yung,
back, sorry,
okay,
going
go,
back,
Frank.
you asked the question if it was good for the NBA. I said no, diba? And not a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think it really the no is really such a big it's such an impactful thing that I feel like to become for the NBA to be successful, there should, as you mentioned, there should be a balance within the teams, right? There's no bias now because the Lakers are a huge franchise. Um, uh, a lot of people are gonna put their attention to them. The Knicks, the Nets, Warriors.
Yeah.
So it becomes imbalanced and it has a kind of a hierarchy. Di ba? Some may times na nakakategorize yung mga teams, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 teams. So
Mm.
kawawa naman yun naman sa tier 3, tier 2. Parang there's always this elite set of teams, tier 1, mostly with the super teams that gets acknowledged and they get all the nationally televised games. They get the referee treatment, which is
Yeah. Get all
such
the
a
ads.
big issue with NBA. If you haven't listened to the Whistleblower podcast by Tim Livingston, he details it. I swear he even okay fine even with the Lakers winning the game 6 in 2002 against the Sacramento Kings, wherein the Lakers were like 27 fouls in the fourth quarter. But the narrative there is the NBA wanted the Lakers to go to the finals because it's a huge franchise rather than having Sacramento. So I think that part is it's really under the radar, under the table even. But I
Mm.
think that's what makes it a bit bad, in my opinion, for the NBA having super.
Yep. Ako like, ganito lang eh. At the end of the day, wala naman tayo sa extremes eh. Like, sige, we're looking at it at past and present lens. Let's look at it at future lens. I-reframe ko yung question. Is it good or bad, di ba? Yun yung current question. Yung reframe to the question na kaya ko sinagot in that way. What will make the NBA better? What direction do you wanna go future-wise? Yun nga, more parity or group of better players converging together. Ako for me, it's the other one, which is yun nga, supposedly parity spread among the best players. So ganun ko lang siya sinasabi. Like future lens, notwithstanding the past and present examples that we indicated, the NBA would be better with more parity. So yeah.
Okay. All right. I
2v2
like that discussion. Oo nga, 2-on-2 eh, no? But what I think you guys would agree that there's both good and bad to the NBA super teams in the league, and it's here to stay. From in the 60s up
Yeah.
until now, the
At the end
2020s,
of the
there's
day,
always been
I
a
think
super team.
with agreement to that, at the end of the day, the owners of the teams, they want their own team to get better. They don't really care about the
Yeah.
NBA getting better as a whole. So if you have the chance to get a super team into your team to get
Yeah,
more
you would.
viewers, more ratings,
You would.
would you skip
Yeah.
it? You wouldn't.
Yeah.
So I think
Tama.
also
Yung
it's
pinakuha
it's
siguro.
inevitable to kind of have that opportunity and skip on it. I mean,
It,
and not
it's
skip
here.
on it.
It's here to stay, and let's face it, super teams. If your favorite team is a super team, you're all for it. If you're facing a super team, you hate to face them. Ganun lang naman yung
Very
dynamic
true.
nun. All right. Okay, so we're winding down this episode with our final pick or each of our picks for the greatest super team in NBA history. I would like to go first for this question. Again, it's a bit of a homer pick, but I believe that alam niyo na, I believe that the 2014 San Antonio Spurs are the best super team of all time, mainly because of the longevity of their core players, and they in fact have three, well, three All-Star caliber players, and all three of them are Hall of Fame worthy for sure. That's Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili. They had a good sixth man. Well, Ginobili was the sixth man. They also had Patty Mills, so key players
Oh,
off the bench,
that you
and
mean.
of course,
Ah,
uh, key
you're
sixth
just
man.
come
Sixth
on,
man
man.
naman.
You are the
You
real
wouldn't.
troll here.
This
You
is the
are the
only
real
podcast,
troll.
guys, that you'll hear Patty Mills in a conversation of
Yeah,
super teams.
that's true, 'di ba? I consider him to be, well, he's
Ah,
still the team. Siya na lang ang natitira sa 2014 team here in the 2021 team. So I got love for Patty Mills.
Yeah, he's very
And
inspirational, I guess,
for
for the
sure, for
Spurs.
sure. And of course, you have Greg Popovich. he's really arguably the greatest coach of all time, and we're lucky. Manzana says no. That's a, we. If you want to hear our discussion on that, that's in a separate episode last season. But I believe that that Spurs team, although not maybe not the super team that drew the most money or drew the most free agents, big free agents, they are a testament to building a super team from the ground up, and also how it is to have established that culture of that ideal organization. Next, how about we go with Frankie J next?
All
Your
right.
favorite super team. I think I know where this is headed. If
No, you
it's
don't.
any
I'm gonna say the
indication. Ah,
Warriors.
no, the
Yeah.
Warriors.
No, for real,
What
for
year? What
real. I'm
year?
gonna say Warriors.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That time when KD was there. I mean,
For
of
sure.
course, they didn't. They never lost. Let's face it. They never lost. They lost. KD was out. Clay was out. Or wait, KD
Yeah.
was out. But you know, all right. Put the let's say put the elite team of the Chicago Bulls any of the 6 years that they won championship against a healthy team that the Warriors built around KD, Steph, Clay, Draymond, even when he was in his prime. And then you have Andre Iguodala.
Livingston.
I don't think that any of those six championship teams from the Bulls, which is the second greatest what do you call this? Second greatest super team for me. Not even my team. But I don't think they
Mm.
can beat the Warriors. They were
Oh,
ruthless. That Warrior team was brutal in every sense of the word. They
yeah.
they just really they just terrified me when I heard that KD was joining the Warriors, and it was like
Yeah.
what they
Already,
had.
I would
I
say
mean,
already a
yeah,
super team before he came in, right?
they were already a super team before the game, but they were an organic super team. But then they added
Mm.
KD. And then
Yeah.
I think up to right now, I don't even think the Nets. If you put the Warriors team and the Nets team right now, I don't think they can beat the Warriors
Mm.
super team. So yeah, Warriors team, KD, Clay, Steph, and Draymond, and
Yeah.
AI Junior, I guess, Andre Iguodala. Um, I think you couldn't really just beat them in a
All right.
7 game series. Healthy.
Definitely a tough team. JV, do you agree?
Wala ko. Sinabi na ni Frankie J lahat. Lahat ng sasabihin ko eh. Feeling ko,
Kaya nga,
ito
thankful
lang
ako
yung
ako
team.
pinauna ni Mark.
Any three dun
I, hindi ko,
sa
I thought
from
he was gonna say
2018
the
to
Heat.
2019. Any three dun ng iteration ng Durant Warriors team na yun, medyo wild.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you na post Heatles era na to. And parang first time ko na pasabi sa sarili ko na medyo OA na to. Medyo daya.
Yeah, medyo madaya na to eh, no? Medyo hindi na to
Oh,
masaya eh.
may nabasa akong stat a while back. Parang, I think it was the 2016-2017 season na um on the whole NBA, there were only 7 players who averaged 22 points and had an effective field goal of 55%. Tapos, seven whole league. Tapos, 3 of them were in the Warriors. Medyo
Mm.
wild.
That is
67
crazy.
win team, mind you, and
Yeah.
objectively, that was one masasabi ko na best super team in history sa NBA. Yun na.
Manzano, to close this episode, who is your
Well,
greatest super team of all time?
I have the strictest definition kasi of a super team among us. Yung kailangan 3 named all-star within the same year, which limits it greatly. So I will have to go with the 17-18 Warriors because, what are my choices? Konti lang. But without that, I think JV and Frankie J said it na rin. They don't need 7 games. You said no one's gonna beat them in a 7 game series. They won't even reach 7 games.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it is the 17-18 Warriors. And quick side note, just realize with that three all-star definition, this is why MJ and Kobe are the GOATs because they never won. All their championship wins were not on super teams. Just saying that on record by my definition. So there.
By
On
your
record.
definition, super team yung Shaq tsaka Kobe na yun
Hindi pa ba super team yun?
They had 2 all-stars. 3, third, wala. So yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it can be adjusted.
Well, by his definition, a very strict definition, it wasn't. So those Kobe and Jordan teams were not a super team, according to Manzano. But if you like this episode talking about the greatest super teams of all time, please subscribe to us and follow us on all our social media on YouTube and Spotify, the Fourcast PH. You can also follow us individually on our social media platforms on the side of your screen. That's going to do it for this episode of the Forecast PH. We hope you enjoyed. So please like, subscribe, share, listen, stream, everything. Just show your love, show your support to us. And we will see you till we will... Nawala ako dun. We will... Ayun, patapos na, no?
That was it.
We will see
Super
you.
team.
We will see you when we see you. Bye.
Bye.